big county beach park. And I think this is cool. And then Wailua Beach. Now, Salt Pond Beach Park is important because there are ancestral salt-making facilities there. So they get the water from there, they put it into mud banks, and they dry it all out and make native Hawaiian salt. Been doing it for 800 years or something like that, same families. And what this shows is that the county beach park right over there may not have bacteria counts, but they know that they're putting caffeine, cholesterol, and Tylenol into their, maybe that's why their salt tastes so good. I don't know. So these are the things that were most common. They did not find the 250 other things they were looking at. These are the ones that I knew what they were, and I thought they were really good indicators of human pollution. Okay. So another thing that we're really concerned about is, and nobody has seen this graph before, and before you hand it out as a PDF, we delete it. This is pesticide levels in streams and groundwater on Kauai. And we're looking at glyphosate, atrazine, and metolachlor. This is the same project that Sam Wall is working on. So Surfrider, as a nationwide organization, is looking for pesticides in recreational waters all around the state of Hawaii. And they have a $300,000 grant to do that at a very sophisticated level. Surfrider Kauai has a little bit of money, and we're doing a screening project following on the Department of Health study to see where are pesticides in our streams and ocean. The reason we're doing that is that the west side of the island is, 20,000 acres of GMO seed crops that use a huge amount of pesticides. And then the rest of the island, we have people in their yards using Roundup all over the place, and we have it in the parks and the golf courses and on Hawaii Community College all over there. They're spraying glyphosate. So we went out and did a survey. I got 5 samples over a 9-month period. We used ELISA techniques for measuring these things, and what we're finding is that the ditches on the west side especially have a lot of pesticides in them. They have the glyphosate at measurable limits. They have some atrazine. Only one of them has metolachlor. And those, this is important. This is there and there. That's at MacArthur Park. MacArthur Park is a county beach park. And the ditch from all the agriculture dumps right into the beach park. So the water out there, if it's oozing out, the groundwater is coming from that ditch, which has all this stuff in it. But what I put in red here, because for this talk, are 2 things, because both of those are groundwater. So a good close friend of mine, organic farmer, taro farmer, aquatic biologist, has his own farm, growing taro and everything, and he works for the state, and he has spring water, natural, pure, total spring water. And what we found is that he has atrazine in his spring water. We repeated this twice, and found the same levels both times. We did this just at the time that he was diagnosed with liver cancer and had to undergo extensive chemotherapy. He's still alive today, barely survived. And we can't figure out why, because he doesn't drink coffee, he doesn't have Coca-Cola, he lived a wonderful, healthy life, but he never knew that in fact the spring water, which is coming from old sugarcane fields back there, has these levels of atrazine in it. So we have a problem of legacy of pesticide use. The sugar plantations and the pineapple use huge amounts of pesticides. Some of it was dumped in mixing areas and contaminated the ground, but what we're finding more and more is that the groundwater has been contaminated with this stuff, and we don't know where it's coming out. This is a shallow water spring, and we don't know about the wells. Now, the second place here, Kabaeli Wetlands, is out on the west side, and I don't know, 20 years ago, somebody came and dug up all the sand for construction, but they didn't have permits, and so they stopped them, and instead of, by the time they got the lawsuit settled, that they were going to fill it all in, all of the native Hawaiian birds came, and the wetland birds, the really rare Hawaiian ducks, coots, stilt, moorhen, they all came and lived in these wetlands. So they made it a bird sanctuary. And it's being fed by the water coming through the groundwater there. And so they then went out and planted all these plants, native Hawaiian plants, big program making native Hawaiian plants, and all the birds are doing great. They then proceeded to say, hey, this is such a great project, we're going to get 90 acres next door, and we're going to expand this wonderful bird sanctuary. At which point they put out comments on their EIS, and I said, wait a second, you have a military base and all their chemicals on one side, and you have all this pesticide use on the other side. Have you checked the water? Because I'm concerned that all the pesticides could affect these extremely rare and endangered birds, especially some pesticides are endocrine disruptors and screw up the reproduction of animals. No problem. Okay, no problem. So, we've gone out there and we found, in fact, that the ditch right next to it, which is Poahali ditch number 2, that's right next to it, and the water, the groundwater in that bird sanctuary does have pretty nice levels of glyphosate in it. And this is repeat. These are averages, by the way, of about 4 or 5 measurements. And so I'm going to be presenting this data to the county fact-finding commission on pesticide use, because we passed a bill trying to ban the use of pesticides. So and when I come back from my trip, I'm going to go talk to them, which is why nobody has seen this data besides you today. But I thought it was important because we do have evidence of groundwater, and this is where Sam Wall, who was Henrietta's student, is looking specifically at how much stuff is in there. And this data, he has a lot more data from when he came out than this. This is just the surfrider looking at these specific areas. We also found glyphosate, by the way, up on the North Shore around the Chero field. So glyphosate is used for road control, for weeds on the side of the road, on ditches and everywhere. But the high concentrations are coming in from large-scale agricultural use, undoubtedly. I have another project that I'm getting rid of all the mangroves in a stream estuarine area, cut all the nasty mangroves down, and plant native Hawaiian plants in this wetlands. How does this segue here? Because this is the wetlands. And so I called up Jason and said, Jason, you have such gorgeous wetlands out there and everything. Let me tell you what we have for glyphosate concentrations. If you will come out and give me advice on how to grow all these native plants to put out in the wetlands, because I've planted 1,000 already, but I need a lot more other species. So he came at lunchtime, because of the sensitive nature of the pesticide data. He came at lunchtime and we talked about it. I did not give him any data to hand out that he couldn't give to anybody else, because there's already lawsuits going on about this. And we talked about it, and it said it's real concerning. And I said, well, let's talk about the plants. And he said, well, when was the last time you were out there? I said, well, I had my own company, Hawaiian Wildlife Tourism People Bird Watching. I said, it's been a year, something since I've been out there. It was really neat. He said, you haven't been out there since? No. And I said, well, why? He said, everything died. What? All the plants died, and all the birds left because there was no more food or anything. Why'd they die? Global climate change. It's been so hot, super hot. It's not. And I have no idea. Salinity, remember Henrietta, the salinity was high salinity. He said, no one had that. That was not that much different than before. And so couldn't figure out. We were sitting there, I don't know what's causing this. What could have caused this? And it was only later, I think it was later as I was trying to go to sleep, I said, it was one of those, like, how stupid are you? What is it? I just measured all this glyphosate. What is glyphosate? It's an herbicide. I was concerned about the effect of the glyphosate on all the birds and things. I never even considered that the glyphosate in the groundwater there would kill off all the wetland plants, or might kill off all the wetland plants. So I sent him an email at 3 in the morning saying, you cannot exclude the fact that maybe this pesticide concentration that you're measuring has in fact killed off your plants. I don't know. We don't know what the cause is. But it's really weird, you know, this wonderful demonstration project suddenly totally bombed. So what we're getting out of our pesticide study is this, and we also did a study on glyphosate and honey, is that the pesticides, glyphosate especially, and atrazine, are ubiquitous. They're all over the place on the island. And they're on the North Shore. People are using it, sides of the roads, fire department, everybody's using glyphosate. And atrazine is more related to large-scale agriculture. But the stuff is out there in measurable quantities. So we did a screening study, and Henrietta, I sent all of the raw data and all my tables over to Phoenix at Department of Health and we spoke briefly. She's going to review it all. So when I get before the joint fact-finding committee, I won't say anything inappropriate. But the thing is, it's all over the place. We have it in measurable quantities. We may have some question on what the accuracy of those counts because of inhibition caused by salinity and stuff. But if we look at the data as plus or minus data, then the stuff is present a lot of the time, not all the time. It comes and goes with respect to rainfall or use. So this is a big issue on Kauai and Maui and the Big Island, and not as much here. That it's tied to the GMO companies because they're the largest users of agricultural pesticides. Before, it was the sugar companies that used it, and we have the legacy of them. And we can't, well, you can, but we're not looking at is it legacy or not legacy. The important thing for the environment is if you have all these things in combinations, it can't be good for the coral reefs and stuff. And the Great Barrier Reef, they're finding this stuff lasts for days and days and goes 30 kilometers offshore in measurable quantities. Okay, next. This neat bumper sticker. This is a project that's underway. Maha'alepu is on the south shore of Kauai. It's a really isolated apua'a with limited access by cane haul roads and gates that close at night. And it's beautiful, and the ocean is clean, and it's just gorgeous out there. And a lot of cultural sites. And Pierre Omidyar, who invented eBay, has a lot of money, and he is trying to set up experimental dairy farms in Hawaii because he feels that we need milk. Now, he's neglecting the fact that I'm lactose intolerant, and most Asians and African Americans are. But he wants to make milk here, and so he is going to make a sustainable fresh milk, grass-fed, zero-waste dairy after the New Zealand model. And he's going to put it out in Maha'alepu. So when they said, hey, we got $15 million, we're going to build this dairy farm, and we're going to put it out here. Aren't you guys excited? You're going to have fresh milk. And this other guy comes up and says, I'm going to make you fresh ice cream from your native stuff. And we go, wait a second, how many cows? 2,000 cows on that, in the most beautiful place on the whole island? Couldn't you go put it in a dump or something? No. So what Surfrider did was, hey, we better go out there and test the water quality before the cows come in, because cows make a lot of cow shit. So we did, and what we found was that area was very highly polluted with nitrates and phosphates and bacteria and a little bit of glyphosate from the current practices going on. What concerns us is that his PR campaign was total lies. The milk wasn't even gonna stay on Kauai, it was gonna come here, and they have the license to ship it to China, which pays the most for milk, or put it on cruise ships. So it's not gonna be any cheaper, and we may never even see any. It's not sustainable because they're gonna import at least 30%, more like 50% of their grain that they feed them from the Midwest. They're gonna ship it all in with all that carbon footprint.
Why do they wanna do it here?
Where, here?
Why?
Not quite. Because we need to become self-sufficient and sustainable. Okay, and
I'm
milk
trying to figure out his motivation.
Labeling, maybe?
Land bank.
Hawaii milk.
It's a way to land bank. I mean, you put a few people to work, you say you're doing something, and you're using the land for a particular purpose that keeps everyone else off of it.
Yeah. And there's tons of problems with this whole thing. But one of the best in his PR thing was it was zero discharge. These cows are gonna have zero discharge. Zero. Okay, now, the interesting, we're trying to put it in perspective. A couple weeks ago, I went and talked to the governor, your governor. We finally went in with my friends and said, I was representing Surfrider, not the anti-dairy group. And we just said, this is so stupid. Did you know our governor is an engineer? No. He has a master's degree in engineering, I think. So how do you put it into terms that he might understand versus, radical environmentalism? On Kauai, we have maybe 75,000 people, depending on how many tourists are there, which you can measure by toilet flushes. We have 75,000 people on the island. Okay, and they poop all the time. They're talking about bringing 2,000 cows onto the island, dairy cows. Okay, how big's a dairy cow? Big, right? Big. And you're feeding them as much as you can so they make milk. 2,000 dairy cows produce the equivalent of 338,000 people. Waste. Okay. And you're gonna put 338,000 people with no sewage treatment plant, no septic tank, no cesspools on 500 acres of land in the most gorgeous part of the island. So what's gonna happen to all that waste? How is it magically gonna disappear? He says zero waste because he says that he can build berms so if it rains that it won't wash into the ditches and streams. But he's done those ditches and streams and it already is washing. Other animal waste are washing in. What he didn't account for were two major things in the zero waste because of the publicity. He didn't account for all of the ammonia and other things and methane from those cows that's gonna go into the atmosphere. And if you ever lived near a dairy farm, it smells, it's terrible. We've had ones on Kauai and they all closed down because they were so foul. And they burn your eyes, the ammonia burned your eyes. He doesn't count that in zero discharge. What evaporates? But how do I bring this all up today is because all of that waste, all of the ammonia, when water hits the cow poop, it's all gonna go in the ground and it's gonna percolate down and it's only 80 feet above the ocean level at the max. Lowest is 20 feet. And there are 3 County of Kauai drinking wells in the middle of that area, and there's 1 private well, which I've already sampled. So this stuff has to be going down. It's not gonna disappear. I don't understand where these people think it's just gonna disappear. And we're gonna have the discharge into the groundwater, which means it's going to probably, if it goes deep enough, destroy the groundwater, drinking water for the County of Kauai, for that whole resort development. It's going to move out in the shallow well from the one house that's out there. It's gonna destroy that. With the nitrate levels, which are poisonous, nitrates are poisonous. And then, we've already looked at, but it's also all the antibiotics and all the endocrines that he's gonna pump into those guys, those gals actually. That's all gonna come into the environment. So we have a big campaign trying to have him move it away from the ocean, move it way back, away from any streams and stuff like that. However, he's in the top 100 wealthiest people in the world or something like that, and he has very strong political contacts, especially with their former governor. So it's an uphill battle. But this is in this whole process, they never considered or talked about groundwater discharge, which is why I'm here. And I was like, oh my God, this is, you know, how did a good marine biologist ever get dragged into groundwater discharge? This is the kind of stuff that we need. Now, I'm a marine biologist, so here, I'm taking it to the next level. About 6 years ago or something, I was working with Chip Fletcher on groundwater, on climate change and all the problems with climate change and ocean acidification. And I knew that, because of the literature, that ocean acidification was happening closer to shore and different areas. And at that point, Chip Fletcher said to me, we just hired Henrietta, and she is an expert on groundwater and discharge. So this is what she and I and Peter have put together. These are slides. I take no responsibility for the slides. She put them together. She can correct me on my interpretation, but if you haven't talked to them about this,
Not to the club.
are you going to?
No.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is right here. Coastal pH trends more negative than offshore. Something's happening closer to the near shore than offshore. One of the things that it could be is related to groundwater discharge or any kind of discharge from the shoreline. In the northwest coast and other places, it's upwelling that's causing the nutrient enrichment, causing the so here are the site. Oh, what we did, I went to the Department of Health. We got all the data they've ever taken, including my own, of pH and salinity and bacteria for the past 20 years. We threw almost everything away because it was not done with good equipment. We then have 6 years of data, and we have like 250 different sites. We pared it all down to where we had a lot of measurements from those sites. And then we did the statistical analysis, and this is the island of Kauai again, and there is Hanalei, the Hanalei Pier, and this is over here is Kalapaki Bay, Salt Pond, Poipu Beach Park. Remember those? I told you to remember. Okay. And here's why. So what we have here, in this case, Station 808 is out at the Salt Pond, and there is a coastal trend that is greater. So you're having a decrease over time with greater than what's happening in the open ocean. Okay? Here you have Kalapaki Beach Park, and you have Poipu Beach Park. The Willy Willy Stream enters in at Kalapaki Beach Park. But most of the water is taken out. But we have there, in that area, big artificial lagoons and a hotel and all sorts of other things. And the stream is heavily contaminated. Poipu Beach Park, I was showing you that before. That's where we found what? Acetaminophen, DEET, cholesterol, caffeine, all that stuff right in the water, in the shallow water. These samples that the pH was taken on by the Department of Health were taken in the exact same place, same manner as all of those personal care products were. They walked up to probably half of the length, got a bucket of water or jug of water and walked back. Right in front of the pavilion, all of the restroom facilities at these spots. At Salt Pond, right in front of all the same spots. Hanalei Pavilion, the trend did not differ from Aloha. And there, that's a north-facing, wide open, and we looked at the discharge. It flushes, a tremendous flushing rate there. Lidgate Park, positive trend, positive. That's a area right by the Wailua River where they put a rock wall and made a little kiddie pond to keep all the jump coming down the river and make people safe and no sharks and everything like that. And there's restroom facilities right there also, which are now, those all go to a sewage treatment plant. So you don't have the same input from those two places as you do the others, which all have, they're all beach parks, and they all have we know from the personal care products that we have groundwater input coming into those areas. And it's the same water that we did the pH on, it's the same water that we did the personal care products and stuff. So the implication is, and I really hadn't looked at this until today, I'm like, oh my God, so I thought, okay, I'll let Henrietta explain this one, she made it.
Right, so the pie charts indicate what percentage of the pH trend, and it's actually not just a trend, but seasonality, daily changes. Actually, it's so the time of the day is considered in this. Also, how much of that can be explained with parameters like changes in salinity, dissolved oxygen, chlorophyll concentration, stream discharge, bacteria counts, and you see that at some sites like Poipu, almost half of it can be explained. So half of the pH trend and variation can be explained by behavioral salinity, dissolved oxygen, chlorophyll, as opposed to at site 089, none of the variables had any exploratory power. And so we don't know what causes it.
We don't know what's causing it, right? But we do have, in here is the bacteria counts, but if you have septic systems, you don't have the bacteria counts. The salinity, if you have a large amount of groundwater influx, the salinity would be variable. And in this case, it does have explanatory, but the other two places don't. We don't have good measures of groundwater discharge for those specific areas. We have not integrated in there because we don't have the data, all of the personal care products. We haven't integrated into this nitrogen isotope data. We haven't done detergents or any of the other indicators. So, the work that she did here with this data is really significant, but we haven't published it yet. And in part, we don't know what the cause of that is, but it demonstrates that there is a shallow water influence upon the pH changes, such that it's changing near shore. And why is this important, and why did I go to her look at this, is that unlike many other places, our coral reefs are they're right there. So if you tell me that we have global ocean change way out in the middle of the ocean, I don't care. I want to know what's happening in Hanalei Bay or right where my reefs are, and what is the influence of ground-based pollution, which is sort of back to where my title is, last slide, my title. This is what are the effects upon urban and agricultural pollution upon the nearshore environment. We're having major effects, and in this case, although global climate change is causing major ocean acidification, nearshore effects seem to be having a supplemental effect on that. It's happening worse, which means we're in dire straits, and with all the coral bleaching and stuff going on, wow, we're really in trouble. And so, although I'd say probably 15 years ago or something, 10 years ago, I never even heard the word, submarine groundwater discharge. Suddenly it became apparent looking in Hanalei that it was extremely significant on an island like this. And on islands such as Oahu or the other island where there are no streams, hardly any streams at all, then how does the stuff get into the ocean? It has to be through the groundwater. We know from pollution studies, from the gas spill at Red Hill, that all of this stuff is getting into our groundwater, and it's going to affect our drinking water. And so much of this and what I've talked about, and the research I've been doing since I moved back to Hawaii, all has I don't know what, societal implications. It's not just, I'm no longer doing basic research. I'm looking at things that seem to have some environmental impact and have some effect upon us and our society. Because I don't have an affiliation, I'm not attached to the university, it's fun. I can go off, and you've seen today, I can go off and do all these fun different experiments and look at different things depending on the whim and whether or not I can get funding to do it. So, I think that's it. Any questions? Here, urban and agricultural groundwater contamination. I did it right. What you asked me. Okay.
Okay. Is that last slide now, is